sex individual differences. And the dark triad is one of the most important ones. The dark triad consists of three personality characteristics. So narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. Hallmarks of narcissism are things like grandiosity. Person thinks that they're more intelligent, more attractive, more dazzling, more charming than they actually are. They think they're the greatest person since sliced bread. Importantly, with narcissism, you also get a sense of entitlement. So they feel entitled to a larger share of the pie, whether that be the financial pie, the status pie, or the sexual pie. Machiavellianism is high scorers tend to pursue an exploitative social strategy. So they might feign cooperation, but then cheat, on subsequent moves. They view other people as pawns to be manipulated for their own instrumental gains. And then psychopathy, one of the hallmarks of psychopathy is a lack of empathy. So most people have a normal empathy circuit where if a child falls down and gets hurt, we feel compassion for the harm that person is undergoing. Or if a puppy gets hit by a car or whatever, we feel compassion. Psychopaths don't. That is, those high on this. It's a dimensional thing. It's not a categorical thing. So those high on psychopathy basically lack empathy. And so if you combine these qualities, narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism, you have some very bad dudes. And I say bad dudes because men tend to score higher in these things than women, especially on the psychopathy dimension. So when you talk about clinical levels of psychopathy, it's estimated to be something like 1% of women and about 4% of men. So men are much higher on that. So why is this important? Well, it's important in the mating context because those who are high on...
I just want to say this, like when you are like, because a lot of women have low self-esteem, right? And when you're like kind of getting enamored with yourself in front of a woman, you're like, damn, I am so good looking. And you're like looking in the mirror and flexing and like, you're just like taking care of yourself and like, damn, I look so fly. That is attractive to women. Like they really get turned on by that, like that narcissism. I'm telling you. And like, the girl that I'm with.
Confidence is what it is.
Yeah. Like, but there's one thing, like, at one point when me and her, she was upset about something. She's like, I don't know what it is about this guy. He just thinks he's a king or something. But I mean, she's getting me fruit cups in the winter. So I think because it does turn them on though, the narcissism, because I believe it is. Yeah, I guess it is a form of
it's the traits, you have to understand too, like you have your narcissistic traits, and you have like, but it's to degree. So when you notice you said clinical levels, right? And so yes, having a trait of like self-confidence, for example, belief in yourself, belief in good outcomes, these are good. Having a rational self-confidence, you know what I mean, is narcissistic delusion, right? So you're it's one thing to do the work, let's say, to make yourself look good in the gym and just be like, yeah, well, hey, I know I look good, so I don't really give a crap, and have that attitude. You know what I mean? It'll be like frustrating because it's like, how do he knows he looks good? Like I can't, you know what I mean? It's like I lose that power over him because he knows he looks good and other women would think he looks good, but at the same time, it's attractive. But if a guy's like delusionally, do you know what I mean? Or selfishly to a point where he's harming others or represents a danger, then that's when it becomes unattractive. So it's always, where do you gauge it? If it starts to represent a threat to her, not just safety, but her security, well-being too much in the relationship, then that's when it becomes unattractive. But if it's not representing a threat to her, other than more or less indirectly or covertly, like you know, being attractive to other people or something like that, then it's absolutely some of the most attractive traits. You know what I mean? Or if you look through the narcissistic traits and stuff, some of the most attractive, you know, people will have that, you know, will have those traits. So, you know,
it is, like I said, it is it is absolutely fundamental in what women find attractive in a man. So the narcissism is real. Let's continue here.
And dark triad traits tend to be sexual deceivers, for one. So they're very often very charming, very good at seducing women and then abandoning them, sometimes with after fleecing them or draining their bank account.
Yay.
They're very good at the art of seduction. They are also tend to be sexual harassers, serial sexual harassers, and sexual coercers. So when it comes to forms of sexual violence, high dark triad guys tend to be perpetrators of this. And so, like most men, I think would be find it ethically abhorrent to sexually harass, say, a woman in the workplace.
Right.
Dark triad guys, in part, maybe they feel entitled to it, and in part they do. I mean, in some cases that I report in the book, there are like literal descriptions where the guys are writing in these journals, "Oh, I knew she was attracted to me. You know, that's why she met me in the Xerox room just when I was there because she wanted to admire my bulging biceps or whatever."
It's all about them.
And this gets into a bias that I talk about, which is the male sexual misperception bias, where a woman smiles at a man thinks, oh, she wants my body, she's attracted to me, and women are thinking, oh, I'm just being friendly, I'm being polite or professional. But these guys, high dark triad guys, are more susceptible to the sexual overperception bias, and they literally believe that the woman is attracted to them and sending them signals, green light, to sexually approach. And so if you combine dark triad traits with the dispositional pursuit of a short-term mating strategy, that's an especially deadly combination. That's when you get sexual harassment, sexual coercion. So these are very bad dudes. Also predictors of intimate partner violence.
What approximate frequency in the male population are these have all three of the dark triad traits? And I realize that they're on a continuum: sociopathy,
yeah,
narcissism.
that's why you can't say it, because they are on a continuum, and it's sort of arbitrary.
What does that mean on a continuum, Paul?
Yeah, so on a continuum means that, like, it's what I said before, alluded to before, that there's a severity in the traits. Do you know what I mean? And that's in personality disorders.
Mhm.
Like, there's
Kind of
think of it like
fluctuates,
autism, like a spectrum, right?
So it kind of fluctuates, like his narcissism will go really high.
Yeah, like some people are narcissistic clinically, but not so far in the spectrum that they couldn't be reasoned with or helped. And some people, let's say, are so far into their narcissism that there's no amount of self-awareness or help that they could ever receive. And the level of danger, you know, that they pose to others is kind of dependent on how severe they are on that spectrum. And you can say this is really observational with
Like
BPD women. Yeah.
Where you,
oops, sorry. Go ahead, continue.
But yeah, this is really observational with BPD women, you know. So there's some borderline women who could get dialectical behavioral therapy, and it might take a few years, but they could get help. There's some that are so far into their BPD that they have too many narcissistic and psychopathic traits that they're just not going to be helped. You know what I mean? There's no way, they'll never be able to help themselves. Yeah. So
Okay, so it kind of like fluctuates. So
yeah,
maybe one
severity.
day.
Think in terms of severity, you know, like, so here's a good benchmark if you're dealing with, I mean, if you're on the spectrum and listening, you're not going to understand it anyway. But if you're dealing with somebody who's like narcissistic, wondering if they're dangerous or whatever, here's what should separate you from an actual narcissist with some of these traits is the ability to take and handle criticism. So someone who's far on the spectrum, who's clinical narcissist, cannot handle criticism. They will they'll respond as if they're being attacked every single time, and as if there's some sort of campaign against them. Just even if you come at them, and I'm not talking like internet attacks or some bullshit. I'm talking about like, as a friend, you're like, hey, bro, like, you really shouldn't do this, man. It's not good. He'll see that person now as like the enemy. Even if he sits there and goes, oh, yeah, okay, like he listens, but now he just puts that person in a category as enemy. And they don't take their irrational sense of self is so elevated that anybody says that they could make a mistake really must mean there's something wrong with that other person. That's a bad thing. This is not a good thing. That would be not just unattractive, but people who can't take criticism or self-criticize will never improve. You know what I mean? You'll never get better. And so, you'll only to a degree go so far in your life and relationships. And so that would be when it's way too far, I'd say. Yeah.
And so here's a little graph for you guys. The psychopathy, some of the things are impulsive, emotionally cold, remorseless, and he just mentioned that, right?
Yeah.
Narcissism, grandiosity, perceived superiority, entitlement, and Machiavellianism, manipulative, self-interested, and domineering.
Yeah. So like, here's a great example, remorselessness. If you have a chick that's been toxic force in your life and she keeps trying to show up in your life and you don't respond to her, you know what I mean? Keep things like little to no response, and keep her on the fence. That's a level of remorselessness here that's healthy, because she's trying to bring an unhealthy dynamic into your life. But if that remorselessness is to an extreme and you don't care about people who you're in relationship with and have no empathy for them, no care, that's obviously a bad thing, right? And so when I say on a spectrum, that's what I mean. Like there's sometimes where you need to be remorseless because somebody is harmful to you or harmful to others. And you need to not, have a whole bunch of, sympathy for them and wanting to help them. I mean, I have exes, for example, that are toxic to me. And I don't wish them ill will. I have a lot of compassion for them, but I have to execute a level of remorselessness if they try to enter into my life, because they will corrupt and pollute my relationship that I'm in, for example. So that would be a time when that trait of remorselessness isn't you being a psychopath, even though the other person may say that you are because they're not getting what they want out of you. It's you setting a proper boundary, and it's a good thing. But of course, you take that remorselessness to a higher degree. You don't care about your friends, family. You can't be trusted. You know what I mean? And you're all for yourself. I mean, that now we're getting into psychopathy, right? Down that line in the spectrum.
Yeah, man. It is definitely prevalent. And I think, like I said, that clip we reviewed earlier with Jordan Peterson, women that are like highly addicted to social media are extremely narcissistic, remorseless in a lot of cases, and vindictive.
Yeah, they're socially conditioning these traits into to make them magnified, Yeah.
I think vindictiveness is kind of tied to narcissism and psychopathy as well. Would you agree? Or
yeah, vindictiveness is more into the psychopathy thing. Like the way I look at it is like, and I look at it a lot in terms of BPD women, just because I'm helping guys handle, toxic situations. So that's where they're more experienced with that. But when the difference between is she just BPD or is she entering into psychopathy, right? Is the BPD woman will create, manufactured indignation, fight with you for nothing, try to win, but she's not going to try to harm you to win. Like there's boundaries there, right? When has psychopathic traits, that's when she's willing to harm you. This is the woman who would call your job and try to get you fired or make a false police report. Now, in order to have a perceived win, however she perceives it, she's willing to go at lengths to harm you. That's when we're getting into psychopathy, like clear signs of psychopathy and psychopathic traits. It's like, it's not just about her being selfish now and, being delusional because of that selfishness. Now she wants to win, and she'll do so with no regards for you or for anybody else as a human being. That's where you start to get into that. It's that cold, zero regards for the other person kind of behavior, you know? And you have to exit those people out of your life. You're not going to fix her. If a girl creates a situation, like creates a domestic thing, like attacks you and you're like having to get her off you, restrain her, you know what I mean? And now she's got bruises and, you know, there's things broken in the house. And then she makes a police report. Okay. Like these situations that happen. And it's like, you're not trying to beat her up. You're exiting the house. Like, you know, you're in the scenario now. Right. And it's like, and you're maybe at risk of getting domestic violence charges when she was the one who was attacking you physically and all that, you know, but knowing that she's the woman, she probably won't get in trouble for it if she, you know, if she can, you know, fabricate that situation. That's somebody that is psychopathic. That is somebody who has no regards for you and will win at all cost. And that is somebody you need to exit out of your life. You can't trust that person. Hell, even in the military, on teams where our job is basically to schwack people, we don't want psychopaths because they're not going to be a team member that we can trust. You know what I mean? We're not going to be somebody that I can rely on. And so you want those people out of your life.